When your heart is broken, trust God. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying this life is unpredictable. It will knock you down, shake you up, and sometimes it'll break your heart into a million little pieces. You don't see it coming. One moment, everything feels just right, and the next, it's as if the ground beneath your feet has crumbled. We've all been there, standing in the ruins of our expectations, staring at the shattered remains of what we thought would be. Now, when your heart's broken, there's a temptation to let despair move in. You feel like the pain is too much to bear, like the pieces are too small to put back together. But I'm here to tell you something powerful, something real. When your heart's broken, trust God. Trust Him when the tears won't stop falling. Trust Him when the silence feels louder than any sound you've ever heard. Trust Him when you can't see a way forward, because He is the way. See, trusting God doesn't mean you won't feel the pain. It doesn't mean you won't have nights where sleep refuses to come, where your pillow is soaked with tears. Trusting God means knowing that pain has a purpose. It means believing that He is working all things, even the heartbreak, even the hurt, for your good. When your heart breaks, it's easy to think it's over. But what if God isn't finished? What if He's taking the pieces of your broken heart and creating something new, something stronger, something more beautiful than you could ever imagine? The Bible says He is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That's not just a comforting line, it's a promise. It means He's not far away, watching you suffer from a distance. No, He's right there in the middle of your mess, holding you up when you can't stand on your own. And let me tell you something else, your heartbreak doesn't scare Him. Your anger, your questions, your doubts, He can handle all of it. In fact, He welcomes it. Bring it all to Him. Lay it at His feet. Because you're not meant to carry this weight alone. Now, I know trusting God when you're broken isn't easy. It takes faith, a kind of faith that doesn't always make sense. It's the kind of faith that says, I don't know why this happened, but I know who holds my future. So let me encourage you tonight, if you're walking through heartbreak, don't let it define you. Don't let it break you beyond repair. Trust the one who made you, the one who knows you better than you know yourself. He sees the end from the beginning. He sees the masterpiece when all you can see are the broken pieces. And remember, this heartbreak isn't the end of your story. It's a chapter, a painful one, yes, but just a chapter. God is the ultimate author, and He writes redemption into every story. He writes healing into every wound. He writes joy into every sorrow. So hold on. Hold on to hope. Hold on to faith. And above all, hold on to Him. Because when your heart's broken, there's no better place to be than in the hands of the one who can heal it. Pain has a purpose. Heartbreak, though painful, is not without meaning. Trust that God can use even the most difficult moments for your growth and ultimate good. God is close to the brokenhearted in your lowest moments. God is near, offering comfort and strength. He doesn't abandon you in your pain. He walks with you through it. Trust beyond understanding. Trusting God doesn't always make sense in the moment, but it requires faith in His greater plan and His ability to bring beauty from brokenness. Healing takes time and surrender. True healing comes when you lay your pain, doubts, and questions at God's feet, allowing Him to carry what you cannot. Heartbreak isn't the end of your story. Your pain is a chapter, not the conclusion. God is writing a story of redemption, joy, and restoration for you. Hope in God's masterpiece. While you may only see broken pieces, God sees the bigger picture. He's creating something stronger and more beautiful than you could ever imagine. Pain has a way of demanding our attention. It comes into our lives uninvited, often in the most unexpected moments, and refuses to be ignored. Heartbreak, in particular, is one of the deepest forms of pain. It doesn't just bruise your emotions, it cuts through to the very core of who you are. It makes you question your worth, your decisions, and even your purpose. But what if I told you that pain has a purpose? That even in the agony of heartbreak, there is something greater at work? When you're in the middle of heartbreak, it's hard to see anything beyond the pain. It feels like a fog that clouds your vision, like a storm that won't pass. And yet pain has a way of shaping us in ways nothing else can. It reveals what we're made of and forces us to confront the parts of ourselves we often avoid. Pain stretches us, and though it may feel unbearable, it is often in those moments of stretching that we grow the most. Without pain, we'd remain stagnant, comfortable. Yes, but unchallenged and unchanged. There's a saying, a seed has to be broken before it can grow. Think about that. When a seed is planted, it doesn't just sit in the soil, untouched and pristine. It has to crack open. It has to break. Only then can it begin to sprout roots and reach for the light. Heartbreak works the same way. It feels like destruction, like something has been irreparably lost. But in reality, it's the beginning of something new. It's in the breaking that we're given the opportunity to grow into something stronger, something deeper, something more aligned with who we are meant to be. But let's not gloss over the reality of the pain itself. It hurts. It hurts deeply. And there's no denying that. It's okay to feel that hurt. It's okay to cry, to grieve, to question why things happened the way they did. Pain is not meant to be ignored or suppressed. It's meant to be felt. Because it's in feeling the pain that we begin to understand its purpose. Pain strips away the superficial. It clears away the distractions and forces us to confront the truth about ourselves, about others, and about life. It brings clarity, even if that clarity doesn't come immediately. More importantly, pain has a way of drawing us closer to God. When everything is going well, it's easy to rely on our own strength, to feel like we're in control. But when heartbreak hits, when we're left with nothing but questions and tears, we're reminded of how much we need Him. Pain humbles us. It brings us to our knees, not out of defeat, but out of surrender. It's in those moments of brokenness that we experience God's presence most deeply. He meets us in our pain. He doesn't waste it. The Bible says that all things work together for the good of those who love Him. That doesn't mean all things are good in and of themselves. Heartbreak isn't good. It's painful, it's messy, and it's hard. But God, in His infinite wisdom and love, can take even the worst moments of our lives and use them for our good. He can use the pain to refine us, to teach us, to prepare us for something greater. Think about the process of refining gold. The gold has to go through the fire to be purified. It has to endure intense heat, melting away the impurities, before it becomes something beautiful and valuable. Our pain is much the same. It's not meaningless. It's a refining fire, a process that, if we allow it, will make us more whole, more resilient, and more aligned with the purpose God has for our lives. So when your heart is broken, remember this: the pain is not the end. It's part of the journey. It's the soil in which new life grows. It's the fire that refines you. It's the place where God does some of His most transformative work. Pain has a purpose. And though you may not see it now, trust that it's leading you towards something far greater than you can imagine. Heartbreak has a way of making you feel utterly alone, as if no one in the world could possibly understand the depth of your pain. It isolates you, creates a silence that's louder than any noise, and leaves you wondering if anyone sees or cares about what you're going through. But here's the truth: God is close to the brokenhearted. He's not distant, watching your suffering from afar. He's right there in the middle of your pain, offering a presence that is steady, unchanging, and full of compassion. When your heart is broken, it's easy to feel abandoned, not just by the people who may have caused your pain, but sometimes even by God. You might find yourself asking, "Where are you, Lord? How could you let this happen to me?" Those questions are natural, and they're okay. God isn't afraid of your doubts or your anger. In fact, He invites you to bring them to Him. He wants you to be honest about how you're feeling because He already knows. And even in the midst of your questions and confusion, He is there closer than you realize. The Bible tells us in Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That verse isn't just a comforting phrase, it's a promise. God doesn't wait for you to have everything figured out or to put on a brave face before He shows up. He meets you in your brokenness, in your tears, in your confusion. When your spirit feels crushed under the weight of your heartbreak, He is there, offering a kind of closeness that no one else can provide. This closeness isn't always something you feel right away. Sometimes the pain is so overwhelming that it's hard to sense God's presence. That's okay too. Just because you don't feel Him doesn't mean He isn't there. Think about the way a parent holds their child in the middle of the night when the child is too tired or upset to notice. The parent's presence doesn't depend on the child's awareness of it. It's there regardless. In the same way, God holds you close, even when you don't recognize it. God's closeness isn't passive, it's active. He's not just there to observe your suffering, He's there to comfort you, to strengthen you, and to guide you through it. His presence is a healing presence. When you feel like you can't take another step, he carries you. When your heart feels too shattered to hold together, he sustains you. He's the quiet strength in the background, the steady hand that keeps you from falling apart completely. But his closeness also means that he understands your pain in a way no one else can. Jesus himself experienced heartbreak during his time on earth. He was betrayed, abandoned, and rejected by the very people he loved. He knows what it's like to cry out in anguish, to feel the sting of loss, and to wrestle with deep sorrow. Because of that, his presence isn't just comforting, it's empathetic. He doesn't just see your pain, he feels it with you. This closeness of God transforms heartbreak into something sacred. It doesn't mean the pain disappears or that you stop feeling the weight of what's happened, but it does mean you're not carrying it alone. God's presence wraps around you like a protective shield, reminding you that no matter how deep the hurt, you are not forsaken, you are seen, you are loved. And you are held by the one who is able to bring beauty from ashes. In those moments when the ache feels unbearable, lean into that truth. Let God's closeness be your anchor. Cry out to him. Even if your words are messy or broken, he hears every whisper, every groan, every unspoken thought. And in return, he offers a peace that transcends understanding, a peace that doesn't erase the heartbreak, but steadies you within it. So as you walk through the valley of heartbreak, remember you are not alone. God is near. He is closer than your breath, closer than your tears, closer than the pain itself. And in his closeness, he offers you everything you need to take the next step, to heal, and to eventually find hope again. Trusting God when your heart is broken requires a kind of faith that doesn't always make sense. It's one thing to trust God when life is good, when everything is falling into place and the sun is shining. But it's an entirely different thing to trust him when your world feels like it's crumbling, when nothing seems to make sense, and when every step forward feels like a battle. That's the moment when faith goes beyond the surface and becomes something deeper, something that doesn't depend on what you see or feel, but on the unshakable truth of who God is. When heartbreak hits, it's natural to want answers. Why did this happen? Why did God allow this pain? Why me? These are honest questions, and God understands them. But the reality is, there are times when you won't get the answers you're looking for, at least not in the moment. And that's where trust comes in. Trusting God doesn't mean you have to understand everything. It doesn't mean you pretend the pain isn't real or that you put on a brave face while secretly falling apart inside. Trusting God means choosing to believe that he is good, even when life isn't. It means holding on to the truth that he has a plan, even when you can't see it. Faith in the midst of heartbreak is like walking in the dark with only a small lamp to guide you. You can't see the whole path, but you trust the light to show you the next step. That's what trusting God looks like. You may not know how the story ends, but you trust the author. You trust that the one who created you, who knows every hair on your head and every beat of your heart, hasn't abandoned you. This kind of trust is often uncomfortable because it asks you to let go of control. When your heart is broken, there's a part of you that wants to fix it, to make sense of it, to find a way to take the pain away as quickly as possible. But trusting God means surrendering that control. It means acknowledging that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay because God does. His perspective is so much greater than ours. He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end all at once. What feels like a dead end to you might actually be a detour leading to something better. Trusting God also means trusting his timing. When you're in pain, you want relief immediately. You want the broken pieces to be mended and the sorrow to be lifted. But God works on his own timeline, and his timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with ours. He knows what you need and when you need it. Sometimes he allows the pain to linger because there are lessons to be learned in the waiting. Growth often happens in the in-between spaces when you're not where you used to be, but not yet where you want to be. It's important to remember that trust isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice. Some days you'll feel strong in your faith, confident that God is working behind the scenes. Other days you'll struggle. You'll question. You'll wonder if you have the strength to keep going. That's okay. Trusting God doesn't mean you never have doubts. It means you bring those doubts to him and let him meet you in your uncertainty. One of the most profound aspects of trusting God in heartbreak is the peace that comes with it. This isn't a peace that comes from your circumstances changing or the pain disappearing. It's a peace that comes from knowing that you're not alone, that you're held by a God who loves you more deeply than you can imagine. It's a peace that doesn't make logical sense but settles deep in your soul, a reminder that even in the storm, God is in control. Trusting God in the midst of heartbreak is an act of courage. It's a declaration that your hope isn't in the situation resolving the way you want, but in the God who holds your future. It's saying, I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I trust that you will make all things new. And that trust, even when it feels fragile, is a powerful thing. It's the foundation that allows you to keep moving forward, step by step, toward healing and restoration. Healing from a broken heart is neither instant nor easy. It's a process that unfolds over time, and often it feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. When you're in the depths of heartbreak, it's natural to wish for a quick fix, a way to bypass the pain and move on. But true healing doesn't work that way. It takes time, and most importantly, it requires surrender, a letting go of the weight you're carrying and placing it in God's hands. One of the hardest parts of healing is accepting that you can't do it on your own. Heartbreak can make you feel like you're drowning, struggling to keep your head above water. You may try to distract yourself, push through the pain, or even pretend it isn't there. But ignoring the hurt only delays the healing. The truth is, healing begins when you stop trying to carry the burden alone and surrender it to God. He is the only one who can take the pain you can't handle and transform it into something redemptive. Surrendering your heartbreak to God doesn't mean you deny the pain or pretend everything is fine. It means being honest, raw, even about how you feel. It's saying, God, this hurts more than I can bear. I don't understand why this happened, and I don't know how to move forward. But I'm giving it to you. That act of surrender is a powerful step toward healing, because it acknowledges that you need His strength and His guidance to make it through. Healing also requires patience with yourself and with the process. In a world that values instant solutions, it's hard to accept that some things simply take time. But God doesn't rush healing because He knows that lasting restoration comes through careful, deliberate work. He uses the waiting period to do more than just mend your broken heart. He uses it to shape you, strengthen you, and draw you closer to Him. During this time, it's important to trust that God is at work, even if you can't see it. Think of a seed planted in the ground. For a long time, nothing seems to be happening. It's hidden beneath the soil, and it's easy to assume it's lifeless. But beneath the surface, there's growth. Roots are forming, preparing for the moment when the seed will break through the soil and begin to flourish. Your healing is like that. You may not see immediate results, but God is working beneath the surface, cultivating something new within you. Another key aspect of healing is allowing yourself to feel the emotions that come with heartbreak. Pain, anger, sadness, confusion, these are all natural responses to loss. Instead of pushing them down or pretending they don't exist, bring them to God. He can handle your feelings, no matter how messy or overwhelming they may seem. In fact, He invites you to pour out your heart to Him. Psalm 62:8 says, "Trust in Him at all times. You people, pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge." Healing happens when you're honest about your pain and allow God to meet you in the middle of it. As you surrender and wait on God, you'll find that He doesn't just take away your pain, He replaces it with something better. He fills the empty spaces with His peace, His love, and His presence. He reminds you that your identity isn't defined by your heartbreak, but by who you are in Him. You are His beloved child, and no loss or rejection can change that. The process of healing also involves learning to forgive not just others, but sometimes yourself. Forgiveness is not about excusing what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about releasing the grip that pain and resentment have on your heart. Forgiveness is part of the surrender, part of giving the situation to God and trusting Him to handle it. It frees you to move forward without the weight of bitterness holding you back. Finally, healing through surrender is a journey of faith. It's trusting that God can take the shattered pieces of your heart and make them whole again. It's believing that He can turn your mourning into joy, your ashes into beauty. And it's allowing Him to write a new chapter in your life, one that's filled with hope, purpose, and a deeper understanding of His love. Healing isn't something you have to figure out on your own. It's a partnership with the one who knows you best and loves you most. As you surrender your pain and let Him work in your life, you'll discover that even the deepest heartbreak can lead to the most profound transformation. Heartbreak can feel like the end of everything you once knew. The plans you made, the dreams you held, and the joy you imagined seem to shatter into pieces that you can't even begin to pick up. It's tempting to believe that the pain you're experiencing is permanent, that the story of your life has been irreversibly defined by loss and disappointment. But heartbreak, no matter how overwhelming, is not the end of your story. It's a chapter, a painful and pivotal one, yes, but it's not the conclusion. God is still writing your story, and His plans for you are not finished. When your heart is broken, it's easy to get stuck in the moment. The pain feels so immediate, so consuming, that it's hard to see anything beyond it. You may find yourself replaying the same memories, the same conversations over and over, trying to make sense of what went wrong. But while reflection is natural, it's important to remember that the chapter you're in is not the entire book. Life doesn't stop with heartbreak, even if it feels that way. God's work in your life isn't over just because something didn't go as you planned. In fact, some of the most beautiful stories begin in the ashes of heartbreak. Throughout Scripture, we see examples of people who experienced deep loss but found renewed purpose through God's grace. Joseph, for instance, was betrayed by his own brothers and sold into slavery. For years, his life seemed to spiral further and further from the dreams he once had. And yet, God used that brokenness to position him for something greater. By the end of his story, Joseph wasn't just restored, he became a source of restoration for others. His pain wasn't wasted, and neither is yours. Heartbreak can feel final, but it's often the beginning of something new. It's in the breaking that God creates space for growth and transformation. He takes what feels like an ending and uses it as a doorway to new opportunities, new relationships, and a deeper understanding of His love. When you surrender your pain to Him, you give Him the opportunity to rewrite your story in ways you never imagined. It's also important to remember that your value and purpose are not diminished by heartbreak. Sometimes when relationships end or dreams fail, it can feel like a reflection of your worth. You might wonder if you're not good enough, if you could have done something differently to prevent the pain. But your identity is not defined by the brokenness you've experienced. You are not your mistakes, your losses, or your failures. You are a child of God, fearfully and wonderfully made, and nothing can change that. Heartbreak is a refining process, not a defining one. It strips away the things that were never meant to define you in the first place, other people's opinions, your own expectations, or the plans you thought you needed to follow. What's left is the core of who you are, and in that core, God is at work. He's reshaping you, not to diminish you, but to prepare you for something greater. As painful as heartbreak is, it's also a reminder that life is dynamic. Nothing stays the same forever, and that includes your pain. The sorrow you feel today will not last forever. Healing may take time, and the journey may be difficult, but God promises to restore what's been broken. In Isaiah 61:3, He speaks of giving a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. That's not just a poetic promise. It's the truth of what God does for those who trust Him. Your story doesn't end in the ashes of heartbreak. God has more for you, more love, more joy, more purpose. He's the God of redemption, the one who takes what was meant for harm and turns it into good. The very pain that feels unbearable now can become a testimony of His faithfulness, a reminder of how He carried you through the darkest times and brought you into the light of a new season. In time, you'll look back on this chapter and see how God was at work even when you couldn't feel it. You'll see how the heartbreak that seemed like an ending was actually the beginning of something better. It doesn't mean the pain didn't matter or that it wasn't real. It means that God's grace is greater than your pain and His plans are bigger than your loss. Heartbreak isn't the end of your story. It's a turning point, a moment when God takes what's broken and begins to create something new. Trust Him with the next chapter, and you'll find that the story He's writing is far more beautiful and meaningful than anything you could have imagined on your own. Heartbreak can leave you feeling shattered, isolated, and hopeless. But one of the most profound truths about God is His ability to bring purpose from pain. He doesn't waste a single tear or moment of suffering. What feels like the end of everything you've known can become the fertile ground where God grows something beautiful and meaningful. Though it's difficult to see in the moment, the pain you're experiencing has the potential to shape you, strengthen you, and bring about a greater purpose than you ever imagined. When your heart is broken, it's natural to ask, why did this happen? Why do I have to feel this pain? While those questions may not have immediate answers, God often uses pain as a tool for growth. Just like a potter molds clay or a gardener prunes a vine, God uses your trials to refine you, to strip away what is unnecessary, and to prepare you for a greater purpose. This process is never easy, but it's essential. Growth rarely happens in comfort. It's through the stretching, the breaking, and the rebuilding that you become who God has created you to be. One of the ways God brings purpose from pain is by deepening your faith. When everything else falls apart, you're left with one constant God. Heartbreak forces you to rely on Him in ways you may not have before. It pushes you to seek Him, to cry out to Him, and to find comfort in His presence. Through this, your relationship with God becomes more intimate and more personal. You begin to understand that He is your anchor in the storm, your refuge in the chaos, and your source of hope when all seems lost. Your pain can also become a source of compassion and empathy for others. When you've walked through heartbreak, you gain a deeper understanding of what it feels like to suffer. This understanding equips you to comfort and support others who are going through similar experiences. The Apostle Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 1:4 that God comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Your heartbreak can become a bridge to connect with others, to share God's love, and to offer hope to those who are hurting. Heartbreak has a way of clarifying what truly matters. It strips away distractions and forces you to reevaluate your priorities. In the process, God can use your pain to realign your focus with His purpose for your life. Perhaps the relationship or situation that broke your heart was never part of His ultimate plan for you. Perhaps He allowed it to end so that He could lead you to something or someone better. In the moment, it's hard to see beyond the pain, but trust that God's plans are for your good, even when they don't align with your expectations. God can also use heartbreak to birth new opportunities and callings. Many people discover their greatest purpose in the wake of their deepest pain. Think of the countless ministries, charities, and organizations that have been founded by people who turned their personal struggles into a mission to help others. Your heartbreak may be the starting point for something extraordinary, a new dream, a new direction, or a new passion that you never would have pursued otherwise. Another way God brings purpose from pain is by strengthening your character. Heartbreak teaches resilience, patience, and perseverance. It forces you to confront your weaknesses and rely on God's strength to carry you through. Over time, these challenges shape you into someone who is stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. They prepare you for the future and equip you to handle whatever lies ahead. God's ability to bring purpose from pain is a reflection of His redemptive nature. He doesn't just mend what's broken, He transforms it. He takes the ashes of your heartbreak and creates something beautiful. He takes the pieces of your shattered dreams and builds something new. And He takes your pain and uses it to fulfill His greater plan for your life. This doesn't mean the pain disappears or that it will always make sense. There will still be moments of sadness, moments when the weight of your heartbreak feels overwhelming. But even in those moments, you can hold on to the promise that God is working. Romans 8:28 reminds us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. All things includes heartbreak. It includes loss, disappointment, and pain. Your heartbreak is not meaningless. It is not wasted. God can and will use it for a purpose greater than you can imagine. As you trust Him with your pain, you'll begin to see glimpses of how He's working behind the scenes, weaving your story into something beautiful. It won't happen overnight, but in time, you'll look back and see how God used your pain to bring about healing, growth, and a renewed sense of purpose. Through your heartbreak, God is preparing you for something greater. He is shaping you, strengthening you, and leading you into a new season of life. Trust Him to bring purpose from your pain, and you'll discover that even in the darkest moments, He is faithful, He is good, and He is working all things together for your good. Heartbreak is not the end of your story. It's a chapter where God works His greatest transformation. Trust Him in the pain, surrender what you can't carry, and allow Him to heal, restore, and lead you to a new purpose. He wastes nothing. Your tears, your struggles, and your journey all serve a greater plan. With faith, you'll see that even in the midst of brokenness, God's love is constant, His grace is sufficient, and His promises are true. Let Him write the next chapter, and trust that it will be more beautiful than anything you could imagine.